Brian is that he didn't give us a bio in advance because we know him. He's our friend, Brian the librarian. And he, I will tell you something about him. He takes trips with his friend Ted and photographs Ted all over the country, and that is definitely one thing that makes him interesting. And is obviously a well-read citizen of the world. So let me introduce Brian.
Thank you, Courtney. Hello, everyone. I guess I'll just put Ted up here right now. Some of you know Ted. He is a well-traveled bear. He's going to be in a few of these slides here. It's not about Ted, though. If you want to see talk about Ted, you can go back, was it 2.5 years ago, to Nerd Nite 100, this very same room, when I gave my TED talk about Ted's travels. It's still on the Nerd Nite YouTube, I believe.
Sure.
Yes. All right. Anyway, this out of the way. Who's excited about Route 66? Yay! I've been looking forward to giving this presentation literally for over a year. I started on it about 3 days ago, but I've been thinking about it for a long time. So who here, just kind of show of hands, who here has driven all or at least most of Route 66? A good chunk of it anyway. So, who feels comfortable? Who has always wanted to drive Route 66? And kind of, yeah, maybe third-ish or, and then this is a little more philosophical, maybe, who has always felt like I'm supposed to feel like I should drive Route 66? So that's a little bit about what this is about. So here's Route 66. This is a Google map. I'll tell you later, don't use Google Map for Route 66. So about a year and a half ago, winter break, I work at KU. We don't earn a lot of money, but we earn a lot of vacation. So I had a couple weeks to burn that use it or lose it kind of thing. So over winter break, I was like, what can I do? And you know, like Australia has always been also one of those, like, I should go to Australia sometime, kind of bucket list thing. Well, I can't afford to go to Australia, but I can afford to drive Route 66. So that's what Ted and I did. So we drove Route 66. And don't worry, this isn't going to be all vacation photos. There will be vacation photos, but it's not all vacation photos. Kind of the themes of the presentation are going to be obviously history of Route 66. It's the centennial, like, you know, so what led up to Route 66, and then I keep thinking about it as the rise and the fall and the rise again of Route 66. The cultural impact is just everywhere. I mean, that's why people are who's excited about it. We all are. We don't know why. Practical tips. As I've asked people over the last, couple weeks, or as I've been working on this, like, what do you want to hear in a Route 66 presentation? They're like, what do I need to do to do this? But the whole time as I've been working on this presentation, I keep thinking about, like, what's the so what? Like, why am I giving this presentation? Why are you all sitting here listening to this presentation? And maybe had one too many glasses of wine one night, got philosophical about it, and started thinking, like, what would Aristotle think of Route 66? And I'm sure there are some ChatGPT haters in the room, and I don't blame you, but I don't hate the response at that. Like, one of the, further down, it's a tragedy of progress, which that's kind of beautiful. But not to worry, this is not about the philosophy of Route 66. We're going to take a different route, pun intended, and just talk about historic Route 66. Now, it's both historic and historical. And the reason it's called historic Route 66 is that it's no longer an official U.S. highway. It actually hasn't been for 41 years. We'll get into that. As you might know, just kind of a quick summary, it runs from Chicago down to LA, Oklahoma City, it's so pretty, and it goes through 8 states. There's 13.2 miles in Kansas, which I actually didn't know until I went to drive the road about a year and a half ago, and we'll get into why that each state is kind of its own, aside from geography, each state is its own kind of vibe as you drive the route. It's 2,448 miles, at least kind of the original. You might notice up by, there's a little bit that goes up by Santa Fe, because the original route did go through Santa Fe, and then they shortened it just to go through Albuquerque. But we'll talk about routing and stuff as we go on. So to go way back, there have obviously been routes throughout the continent for years and years, I mean, thousands and thousands of years. Not the specific kind of same Route 66 route, which is a manufactured route, but there's this one kind of random example I have on the left here is the Old Mine Road in New Jersey and New York, back east, and but it's actually, by some estimates, over 10,000 years old, this particular trail. So there's been migratory routes and trade routes that have been going on for a long time on this continent, obviously. World II, just a few examples. I don't know if you can see on the upper left, the yellow one. Anyone know what trail that is? Yeah, Lewis and Clark there. Yeah, that's Lewis and Clark back there. I've got my Oregon Trail joke here. The lower middle, what's that one? Where there's the blue line and the red line meet at Promontory Point. It's the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, I believe. And then maybe the trickiest one, ironically enough, what's the yellow?
What became 40?
It's I-80 is actually the right answer in the sense that it was originally the Lincoln Highway. In 1913, that was the first transcontinental highway, coast to coast, not paved entirely, and just a kind of a mix of roads. But from Times Square to Lincoln Park in San Francisco, which is roughly I-80 these days. So point being, since European settlement, there have been all these westward settlements and travel, and we'll see that with Route 66. So it's finals week at KU, so yes, this will be on the test. Get your pens and paper out, take some notes. The Model T was introduced in 1908. It originally cost, I think, $800 and got down to $300, if I remember right, which is about like $10,000 today. So that made auto travel very affordable, or relatively. But there still weren't roads for it. It's horse and buggy routes and whatever the local municipalities and the states had for roads is what these cars were driving on. So in 1916, Congress gets involved. They throw some money at it. I want to say $79 million, which is about $2 billion today, matching funds for the state municipalities to build out their roads. Also, Woodrow Wilson, I thought this was really interesting. 1916, he mostly runs saying, I'm not going to get us into the war. But among other things, he said, also, we need better roads, both urban and rural. So he gets elected, we immediately get into a war. Congress spends that money, does build out some roads. 1921, I kind of jokingly like to think that the Congress looked around and said, oh man, our bootleggers can't get stuff to us like so they threw even more money at it, and then that led to the Association of State Highways Officials, now the Association of State Highways and Transportation Officials. It's now ASHTO, back then ASHTO. They created this commission of the Joint Board of Interstate Highways, which a year later in 1926, which is 100 years ago now, introduces the U.S. highway system that we know today. And so Lincoln Highway, for example, the reason I'm not talking about Lincoln Highway as Route 80 is that it wasn't numbered back then. So we basically now, thanks to this system, we have numbered highways and later numbered interstates. As you mostly probably know, it's generally east to west is even numbers, so I-70 is an even number, and because it's 70, a round number, it's an important number. And then I-29, for example, is an odd number, not as important, regionally important, but just not as the national number. So, and that'll come up later. And a little foreshadowing too, in 1956, because we had another war, after the war, to end all wars, there was another war, and Eisenhower comes back and he says, oh man, I really dug that Audubon they had over there. We need something like that to move our military and some goods, and if we can take vacations on that, that's great too. So that's a little foreshadowing, obviously, what happened to Route 66. But back to the beginning of Route 66, a gentleman by the name of Cyrus Avery is known as the father of Route 66. He was born in Pennsylvania, raised and schooled in Missouri, made his money in Indian Territory / Oklahoma, and then eventually died in LA. And I just love that trajectory and that he's moving west as he goes. So the letter here from the Ashas in Washington, D.C. is when he wanted to create this route. Like he's at least credited with having the idea of let's have this route from Chicago to Los Angeles that will follow this westward expansion that we saw in those earlier maps. And he wanted it to be Route 60. 60, round number, important route. Long story, politics, Kentucky wouldn't play along. They wanted Route 60, which it still does. Route 60 goes through Kentucky. And so this is a letter. They actually said, you can have Route 62. And he said, that doesn't have a good ring to it. So instead, he's like, what about Route 66? And this is the letter where he says, okay, or they say, you can have Route 66. So that's why Route 66 is 66. So a few more dates here. It's commissioned in 1926, but also every other highway that was around at the start of the highway system was created in 1926. So Route 60, for example, is 100 years old also, but we're not celebrating 100 years of Route 60. So it's, again, that goes back to why it's Route 66 so special. Part of that is because in 1927 already in Tulsa, which is where Cy Avery was at the time, they created the Highway 66 Association, which they were the ones who introduced the term Main Street of America, and were marketing this thing from the very beginning. They will sell you swag. Anybody will sell you Route 66 swag. We just gave it away too. So a year later, the last stretch of Route 66 was completed in Missouri, in the Ozarks, between Uvalde and Lebanon, which is just a tough part to complete. And I should be clear too, when they made Route 66, as you see in that red line there, it's not like they paved this road overnight. The original Route 66 was cobbled together, not cobblestones, but it was cobbled together of existing highways and roads. So it was very, very kind of wonky at first and gradually got smoothed out. It also was only paved, 1/3 of it, about 800 miles was paved at the beginning of the 2,448 miles. Illinois was the first state to have paved their stretch of it, which is maybe a little easier because it's all pretty flat and everything. And then Kansas with our 13.2 miles, we paved, or rather had concrete in the same year, 1929. Then anything else we know happened in 1929? Yeah, things kind of went to shit a little bit. Which I guess silver lining is that there was a works program administration to finish paving. And so in 1933 they started to complete paving, which eventually was done in 38. But in the meantime, there's people who, and again, I love the idea that Oklahoma is it's not only in the center of Route 66, but it has been so central from the beginning. Our friend Cy Avery was from grapes of wrath. I'm just going to assume there's a happy ending. Steinbeck only has happy endings. So, but that's where we get the term the Mother Road. And the full quote is actually it's the Mother Road of flight. And it was the Okies who were driving out to California looking for work because they, the Dust Bowl and the recession, or depression and everything. So maybe not happy times along the road at that point. I also find it really ironic that the first of what we would now call an interstate started in Tulsa and went from Tulsa to Oklahoma City, which to this day is just a shitty drive. But it's good that this turnpike, I think it's I-44 now, it's good that it exists because it's a way to just get people who want to go between Oklahoma City and Tulsa to get them very quickly, and then allows me to kind of tootle along with Route 66 on the side, so not all bad. So that was the beginning of Route 66 being replaced by Interstate. 1984 was when the last stretch happened, and then in 1985, Route 66 officially was decommissioned. So it's, like I said earlier, it's no longer really a highway. But in between, I kind of love this, and this is a hypothesis I have no data for this, but I purposely have the juxtaposition here of the Okies, and I can't remember if that was a Model T truck or what, but anyway, they're going, he's just trying to help his family survive the Depression, and a generation or so later, it's family vacation, like literally vacation. And kind of my thinking is that as family sizes got smaller, you could fit your family in a station wagon. Thanks to post-war boom, there's more money, you can afford to take your family to Wally World. Airlines weren't deregulated yet, so maybe you can't afford to fly to Los Angeles, but you can afford to drive to Los Angeles, just like I drove Route 66 because I couldn't afford to fly to Australia. So that there was a lot of travel along the same route, not necessarily I-66 or Route 66, but travel along that route. And the thing is, though, if you want to get to Wally World, you want to drive as quickly as possible, so people would be happy to drive on the interstate, and kind of, for a while, maybe forgot about the romance, if you will, of Route 66. So it had been decommissioned in 1985. Almost immediately, this fellow here, Angel Delgadillo, I knew I was going to screw that up. That photo was taken about a week and a half ago. He's 99 years old. So obviously Route 66 keeps you young. He was at a celebration of the 100-year centennial of Route 66, but he was really instrumental in creating that Route 66 Association in Selling in Arizona, and that was the first state to have an association, and then the other states followed suit, and within, I think, 3 years, every state along the route had this historical association to try to preserve Route 66 in some way. Illinois, I mentioned earlier, they're kind of proud of their route, so they were the first ones to have those brown signs saying Historic Route 66, which is kind of confusing if you're in Illinois, because they're like, it's 1926 to 1936, take this road. It's 1936 to 1940, take this road. And 1940, so it's they're all about it. Congress got involved again, passed a Preservation Act that Clinton signed in '99, and then there's still an effort to create this historical trail designation for Route 66. Obviously, lots of local efforts going on at the same time. And then just very recently, I think 2 weeks ago, there was a building that in Albuquerque is historic. So that was the happy news, like, yay, things are being preserved, but also reality at the same time. There's this historic diner that had been red flagged by the city, and then this wall just collapsed. Nobody got hurt, but now they're like, we should probably tear this building down because it's so there's people trying to preserve things, but then just there's the reality. And, so happy stuff instead. So this is now the cultural aspect. Bobby Tripp, while driving the highway in 1956, I believe, wrote the song Get Your Kicks on Route 66. We're recording this, so I'm not going to play a clip because I don't want to get copyright strike on the video. But I'm sure you've heard many versions of it. Nat King Cole, I think, was the first one to actually record it and release it. I'm partial to the Chuck Berry version. Bobby Tripp's version is actually kind of jazzy. That's the whole thing. Depeche Mode has a version. Rolling Stones, all kinds of. I'm not even including the one from Cars, which we will get to now. So books, movies, TVs. I already mentioned Grapes of Wrath. There's the book in 1939, the movie in 1940. And I was talking to my friend Kyle the other day about this, and it suddenly dawned on me that in the movie you have Henry Fonda taking his family, on Route 66, and then a generation later you have his son Peter Fonda, who's driving an Easy Rider, not necessarily on Route 66, but it's very much that vibe, finding America. So that's sort of that's stuck with me. Early 60s, there was actually a TV show called Route 66 that had very little to do with Route 66. They just kind of were borrowing, the positive vibe of that. Obviously, Cars, that movie is about Route 66, like very literally about Route 66. I don't think they say Route 66 in the movie, but it is, that's what it is. And then I included Baghdad Cafe just because I was curious if anyone here is familiar with that. I see one hand, two, yeah, okay, two and a half hands. Okay, that's, which is, I'm not surprised. I used to live in Germany, and that, I think over there it's called Out of Rosenheim, but it's based on a real place that's still open, Baghdad Cafe, outside of Bakersfield, I think, in California. And that's a scene from the movie. That's what it looks like there. It's high desert. But my point just being that it's Route 66 is not just a national phenomenon, but it's internationally renowned. And when I drove it, I saw people from all around the world. I think, especially this year with the if they can get in the U.S. right now, there's going to be a lot of people coming to drive Route 66 for this TV. Some other fun stuff along the highway. Here's where we get the vacation photos with Ted. There's lots of awesome little motels, not nearly as many as there used to be. I try staying in them when I can just to help, keep them up. I did not stay in the Munger Moss Hotel, which I still wanted to, but and I wanted to stay top middle in the Blue Swallow Motel, Tucumcari, New Mexico, if you pass through. There's nothing around there otherwise, but it's an amazing town at night because of all the neon, and they really lean into their Route 66 existence. The closest is that Rockwood Motel Court, which is in Springfield, Missouri. It's very cozy, but it's kind of and nothing around it even really. But it's a fun place to stay if you're really just passing through. And then I really struggled with, you see the bottom center with the teepees. I stayed in 2 teepee motels, which there used to be a lot more, but I stayed in 2 teepee motels on my trip, which I struggled with as kind of like a wannabe old dude. But I just decided I'm going to lean into the kitschiness and the historical aspect of this. And they, weirdly enough, were also the cheapest places I stayed, which I'll talk about cost in a minute. Other reasons you drive Route 66, so many quirky things along the way. There's so many muffler men, which have been repurposed in various ways. That's the Gemini Giant just south of Chicago. Top middle is Oatman, Arizona, where there's wild birds just wandering around town. So I have to be careful that Ted didn't get eaten. That's me almost getting eaten by the blue whale of Cartusa, just outside of Tulsa. That's the closest of these if you just want to take a quick weekend road trip. Cool old architecture, like in Texas, the old gas station there, and certainly the Cadillac Ranch. Personally, I just wouldn't recommend stopping in Winslow, Arizona. That's because I got a $250 ticket there. Pretty sure they're looking for out-of-state plates, because I had my phone in my hand, so I got the whole did not belong hands-free thing, and it's okay. But I went with that. $250. Centennial celebrations. Thank you. Somebody got that. Centennial celebrations are happening this whole year. There's whole caravans of classic cars that are going. I actually personally would recommend not driving it this year because of all the activity happening, or at least I'm not planning to. I want to go back and drive stretches of it again. There's the stamps, which David just won. Those just came out like a week ago, with some classic Route 66. And there was a Google Doodle as well a couple weeks ago. So lots of great stuff happening. So you want to drive Route 66? What should you know? Do your home, and these apply for any road trip. Really, I'm a big fan of road trips. I often, depending on the time of year, I'll pick a direction, and these are pretty much rules that I follow. Not rules, because it's no fun to do rules. But so do your homework. Depending on the length of the trip and everything, I spend days, if not weeks, just googling stuff, watching lots of YouTube. There's some great travel vlogs out there where people are driving along, just telling you about their adventures, and you can find somebody you enjoy watching and watch those vlogs. But so plan things, but be flexible. I think I have the first and second bullet points here backwards. So I like to, if I want to stay in one of those classic motels that I think is going to be filled up, I'll make a reservation. But if I can, I'll make it cancelable. So plans change. As great as Route 66 is, if it's going to be raining that direction, but it's not raining in Monument Valley, for example, just go to that instead. That's the part of the trip, right? With Route 66 in particular, don't rely on Google Maps. I have thanks to Sheila, there are paper maps, which I just noticed this afternoon have some of the teepee motels on the cover of it. I meant to bring a more of like a paper travel guide. There's, if that's what helps you. But I just recently got this coffee table that has some great stuff in it. I would take this on the road trip, and it's a good way to sort of look through and see what you might want to see. And consider the off season, because Route 66 is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So, like I said, most of what I traveled, I did in midwinter, which the only drawback to that is that the days were really short. So the sun was setting on me by 4 p.m. a lot of times, so I had to get up early, which I don't usually like to do. So, and then just very generally, best travel advice I've ever gotten is to pack half as many clothes and take twice as much money as what you expect. As someone who's been traveling for decades now, that's very true. And with Route 66, I would actually say plan on twice as much time too as you can, so that, because the point is not to get there, the point is the actual journey itself. So final thoughts, and I promised there wouldn't be philosophy involved. There's, what's the song from Cars? Life is a highway. And I always hear when those kind of platitudes, and but it's true in the sense that I've been talking about these stops along the way and the motels and the destinations and everything, but really as you're driving these 2,400 plus miles, most of it is this just sort of travel. And if you think about it, life is a little like that too, where it's, we have the major moments in our lives, but most of it's just sort of waiting for questions, if anyone has questions.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. Does anybody have any questions that he did not cover? Here we go.
Hey, so I live in Baldwin City, which is on Route 56, and I've noticed that across the top of Kansas, there's a Route 36. Does that mean that somewhere south of us, there's a Route 76? Or an 86?
Well, they go with the east to west, the low numbers like I-10 is at the bottom and I-90 is at the top. So there are some quirky things. I meant to Google I-56 better because it's pretty short.
Right.
Yeah.
So in 1995, I was on a particular Hajira to drive to the Trinity site for the nuclear bomb 50th anniversary. And I wound up in Tucumcari. And I realized I was on Route 66. And it was after, coming south, on Highway 50 in Kansas. And boy, did that ever take on meaning. And I noticed all of those motels, and it was just an incredible, it added so much to the experience to know that I was on Route 66. And I think, does it go through Roswell? I wound up in Roswell.
It goes north of Roswell.
Yes.
So.
But it was in the mix, and boy, did it have a lot of meaning. And thank you for this consciousness. Thank you. And it just, I want to tell you that Route 56 through Baldwin is also very popular with motorcycle groups. We have these huge entourages of motorcycles that come through Baldwin. And anyway, there it is.
I think it's popular with trucks too, if I remember right, because you can take Route 56 almost to Route 66 if you follow it down. But it's one of those, because it's transportation, there's no interstate that travels there, which is why I'm not an interstate hater, by the way, is that put the trucks and the people who are just cruising through on the interstate and give me the back highways. So it's nice to have those things. But yeah, middle Kansas trucks are there. There was another question.
Oh, great. Hey, thanks for being right here.
So, I've seen several episodes of the TV show Route 66. Does that have anything to do with Route 66?
I watched one episode and Googled, and there are 3 episodes apparently that have anything to do with Route 66. It's just, they're just borrowing the fame.
They're on the highway.
Yeah, we'll go back here. They'll go with Larry.
Yeah, they are traveling. They're just not necessarily on Route 66. Yeah.
Okay, so this is less of a question, more of a comment. I do want to say that Cars does explicitly evoke Route 66.
Oh, yes, okay.
There is a brief scene in the movie where the Route 66 iconic sign is shown. And I don't assume that you have this data in front of you right now, but I would be curious to see how traveling on Route 66 increased after the 2006 smash Pixar hit that is Cars. I think it would be interesting to check out that data.
And you knew the year too.
That's actually how I learned about Route 66. I had never heard about it before.
Yeah. And that's what was interesting to me as I got into Route 66 is I'm old enough that was not part of my maybe if I'd been babysitting around the time.
On your timeline, I thought it was interesting. There was a gap between 1999 and 2026, and I wanted to say no. Right there's a generation missed because 2006 Cars introduced a new generation.
They did, yeah.
Which I think is beautiful.
They really did.
Thank you. We got a couple more questions.
Actually, I've got 3 observations based on having lived in Albuquerque for 4 years. So one is, if you're planning your trip in October, there's the Balloon Festival, which is in itself a great thing to do, but you really have to plan for motel space and crowds. And if your goal was to just get to LA, you might have to skip Albuquerque because it's busy. The second thing was, as a junior high student, I hadn't read The Grapes of Wrath, but I was schooled that the 3 lowest forms of life were a 7th grader, a Texan, and an Okie, in that order. And I just took that as gospel. And it was only after reading The Grapes of Wrath that I understood how Albuquerque would have suffered from all these poor people dragging themselves through on their way to California. And, you know, it was going to be a constant stream of impoverished trash and a lot of prejudice against that from the locals. And a certain amount of people who got stuck in Albuquerque because that's where the car broke down. The final thing is, we talk about travel now as if it's always been 75, 80, 85 miles an hour. When our family van with no AC was driving to California along that route, it was 55 or 60 or 70 tops if we weren't paying attention, my mom was driving. For the Grapes of Wrath people, it was 30 miles an hour in that Model T, and they absolutely had to do the Mojave Desert in the dark or die. So our version now almost goes by too quickly and too luxuriously. You know, if you really want to see it and experience it, I don't recommend the 30 mile an hour, but the 55, 65, the blue highway speeds, you'll end up seeing more.
There's an original stretch in Springfield, Missouri, which for some reason claims to be the birthplace of Route 66, but is not. Sheila and I were talking about that the other day, where it's 15 miles an hour, which I think was the original. But, and that was, I guess, kind of my point when I talked about the Henry Fonda versus Peter Fonda, how just in that generation, the vibe very much changed.
This is really more a comment, but at the beginning you asked, who's been on Route 66? I was like, I'm pretty sure I've been on Route 66. And then I remember, every vacation we took to California, we stopped at every single one of those stops. So I know that was Route 56, and we'd stop at like Bedrock, USA, and stop at Hobo Joe's and in Flagstaff, and stop at Barstow, and go to the McDonald's and send a train, and like all that crazy stuff, and stay in crazy motels that are all like Western themed and crazy and modern, futuristic, tiled and carpeted, crazy colors, and man, I miss that shit.
Were you on Route 66 though, or I-40?
Probably both.
Right. And there are times when there's, especially like going over mountain passes, there's Route 66 because there's only one spot for the roads.
But you just unlocked like 30 core memories I've forgotten about.
Hopefully it goes.
All right. Well, there we go. Thank you so much, Brian. And that wraps up another spectacular Nerd Night number 125. We'll be back at it next month, June 10th. Please join us, and we'll see you then. Have a good night.